Hello. It is Wednesday, February 15th at 4:44 p.m. And in a minute, we will begin our uh, uh, vlog. I don't know if this is I think that's better. So welcome to my team. My name is Fred Trotter. I'm a healthcare data journalist and author, and I blog about the impacts of data in healthcare and think about the impacts of data in healthcare and healthcare privacy and a bunch of things. And it is in that work that I met Carl Serkan, who was someone that I met through the beginning of the Light Collective. And he was, an author, lecturer, academic, and a professor of women's and gender studies at MIT. I was a nice guy, and he really helped us, and I really appreciated his insights. And I wanted to kind of spend a second and devote just a little bit in a moment of silence. Let's see here. For him, because he passed away, unfortunately. And I'm going to link to this for a second and just be quiet. And Carl's the farthest to the left in that picture. So normally I try to think of something funny to say that the video is sponsored by, but I'm just going to leave it at, this one's for Carl and move on. So thank you, Carl, for your work and your help. It really did matter. And we'll keep going without you, but it'll be a little less fun. So with that in mind, I would like to introduce the work of the Light Collective, which, let me see here. The Light Collective, and I see, I want to split the screen. I guess I have to share the screen first. And then do it like so. And forgive me for taking a second to get to where we need to be, but in a second, there we are. Really like this new website. This website's a new Light Collective website. And I am loading up my LinkedIn and Twitter feeds. So if you would like to join me and chat with me or comment, you can do so through, I think LinkedIn is better. Here we go. And chat with me or comment. You can do so. So that's me, listening to the stream. Pretty weird. All right. All right, well, thank you for your patience as we get going. And so one of the things that we worked on extensively at the Light Collective is this idea of no aggregation without representation, is that patients whose data is being aggregated should be involved in the decision making of when that data is leveraged. And in general, not to put too fine a point on the work, we wanted to have data be used for patients' good. So we wanted the good use, and we wanted to stop the bad use. So we didn't want privacy breaches, and we didn't want, people being sloppy with patient data, and people being, using patient data to take advantage of patients. It's a privacy-focused organization, but I really am pretty proud of having worked to start this. And one of the things that we really wrestled with was some of the things that Facebook did, or rather things that the Facebook we couldn't seem to get accountability for. And we just found out last week sometime that so just to take a step back, because I know, in large part, the reason I make these videos is not because there's anybody who listens to them right now, because there certainly isn't. Very frequently, I make these videos to crickets, but they stay up online, and they're a really good chronicle of my thinking and what's happening. And I'm very pleased with the number of people who watch them throughout the week. But I think a lot of the people who watch them are not familiar with healthcare data, especially healthcare data regulations, and kind of the sausage making of how of how data plays out, patient data use specifically in clinical settings, how it plays out in the United States. There's two basic paradigms of data regulation in the United States. Hey, Aaron, thanks for listening. I really appreciate the fact that you listen. So you are the exception. And someday, Aaron, by the way, I'm going to send you a link in the middle of this, and I'm going to ask you to come on and just do this with me, because you're so interesting. And it's Erin Moore that I'm speaking with. She's chatting at me. So there's two paradigms, right? And the two paradigms are basically split based on where you got your data. And people complain about HIPAA, which is the privacy and security and data law that applies to clinicians. And people misinterpret it, and they blame it for their decisions not to share data when sharing data would be in the interest of patients. They say, oh, we can't do that because of HIPAA, or it's too risky because of HIPAA, or whatever. And I'd just like to say, HIPAA is an extraordinarily well-designed piece of legislation. It had a tremendous amount of foresight. It's not very many pieces of legislation that are still basically valid years after they were first conceptualized, that conceptualize the future of data sharing and the needs of data sharing and the approach to data sharing, as well as that law has. But the basic idea of HIPAA, it kind of splits the world into two types of entities: HIPAA covered entities and not HIPAA covered entities. And that makes intuitive sense. And of course, you can actually go to HHS. They've got a little calculator that you can go through. It says, am I HIPAA covered? And so if you're curious, you do not necessarily need to, and they've also written a lot of guidance about who is HIPAA covered and who's not. So if you're curious, you can go to the HHS website, HIPAA, or just Google HHS HIPAA, am I covered? And it'll take you through a series of steps that will answer the question about whether or not you're covered. It's going to hinge on whether or not you are in a position to know things as a side effect of your clinical service to a patient that is data about the patient. So if you are taking patient blood and giving back from that blood information to the patient about their healthcare status, you are HIPAA covered. And that does not mean you have an absolute responsibility for the data that you generate. Once you give it to the patient, for instance, it kind of becomes not your problem. So a perfect example of an organization that is not HIPAA covered is McDonald's, right? If you want to go get a hamburger, like, that's fine, and you can do that. And you can take a copy of your recent blood test results to McDonald's, and you can say, I am going to go review these as I have a big, juicy hamburger. And then you can take that folder and you can put it on the table at McDonald's, and then you walk off. And McDonald's is not responsible for protecting your lab results. And LabCorp, who may have given you the lab results, is also not responsible for the fact that McDonald's has them, right? Because McDonald's is not HIPAA covered, and after your data got into your hands, it's not LabCorp's problem either, right? It becomes your data. You have the right to do whatever you want with your healthcare data, including acting foolishly, right? And if a New York Times reporter is at McDonald's and you are a person of import and you walk off and you leave your test results, they have the right to go over and treat your test results as discarded and open up that folder, and they can put it on the front page of the New York Times. And the New York Times is not in trouble, right? Because it's a decision about what you did with your data when you choose to leave your data out. So, and there's details, and I'm not a lawyer, and if I wasn't a lawyer, I wouldn't be your lawyer, and maybe you need a lawyer. I think it's the longest version of that particular phrase that matters. And you shouldn't necessarily use my advice to determine this, but in general, this parsing of the world into two parts from a cybersecurity perspective has been a good thing. There is regulation that is extensive and goes across industry and is more generally about privacy coming from the European Union, called GDPR, which is a kind of very comprehensive privacy legislation. It includes the right to be forgotten. It includes a bunch of, I think, on balance, it's another good law, but it's not narrowly limited to healthcare organizations like HIPAA is. And GDPR is important because it applies to people who are citizens of the EU, even when they leave the EU. And that means that if a customer, if the United States organization is doing business in the EU, or if they're doing business with EU citizens outside of the EU, then there are circumstances under which the GDPR can start to matter for them. So that's what's happening in Europe. In the United States, there is only a couple of different rules that apply across the board. One of them is the rule that you can't just sign up children for internet services. Right? So there's some pretty hefty fines for people who do this. And the reason why Facebook does not allow you to sign up unless you are over 13 years old, of course, they are famous for not actually enforcing that. So 6-year-olds have Facebook's accounts and whatnot. But they all have to say they're 13. The reason they have to say they're 13 and circumvent Facebook's understanding of who they are as a person is because you have to have parental consent in order to have a child use an internet service. And there are video game systems, that actually do account for this and are things that you can have a child use, but they involve the parents. Parents coming in and saying, "Yeah, this is a service that I want my child to be able to sign up for." Beyond that, and special to clinical care, the only rule is what's known as the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, breach notification rule. Now, the FTC is also responsible for generally going after wide-scale business fraud in the United States. And one of the things that has been pretty confusing is that FTC has gone after entities in the past which are clinical entities which were doing essentially egregious things with healthcare data, but they chose not to leverage and not to go after an organization who, again, shared patient data inappropriately under their powers with health breach notification rule. And I think actually, this is important enough. If you will permit me for a moment, I'm just going to get the actual language of the breach notification rule. Also, so I like to be able to kind of have these little lectures here be things that I can kind of send people to and say, hey, on such and such a day I have a video on this, and you can go listen to me. All right, here it is. Here's the FTC health breach notification rule. Notice how short it is. This is not a massive amount of text. Let me see here if there's like a longer version of this text. Yeah, okay. Well, this is a little bit longer. Still pretty short. Still pretty short. The rule requires vendors of personal health records entities to notify consumers following a breach involving unsecured information. In addition, if a service provider to one of these entities has a breach, it must notify the entity, which in turn must notify consumers. The final rule specifies the timing, method, content of notification, and in cases of certain breaches involving 500 or more people, requires notice to the media. And what that means is if you have a large breach, you must go to your local newspaper or whatever is appropriate, and you must tell people, right? So you contact them individually. And I don't know if you remember, but one of the consequences of this, let me just find this section. All right, so this is, I don't know if I can get this. Okay, personal health record. It's really going to be important in a second. So, so one of the elements of this, and I have looked at this a long time, and again, like I just said, I'm not a lawyer, so if you're covered by this and you have concerns, you can't hire me, and if you couldn't, I wouldn't be able to be hired for that. So it's just, I don't know, I can't express deeply enough how I'm the wrong person to solve that problem for you. But I am used to designing systems that accommodate and conform to this. And one of the things that people did when this rule first came out, what it says is if you have a way to get a hold of people, you have a breach and you have to notify them, the people who had a breach. If you are able to notify them through two channels, like you have two email addresses for them, for instance, you can send them notifications on these two channels, and you're good. If you only have one way to communicate with them, and you do not prove that you are successful in communicating, and again, I'm glossing over, so I could be wrong about what the specific text says, then you have to go ahead and hire and put information in the media. And I don't know if you remember, but when this first came out, almost every email service in response to this regulation asked for a second email address. Like, do you have a second email address that you can enter in, so that if we have a problem, then we are going to want to have two ways to communicate with you? Because if you could send something to a phone or an email address, then you didn't have to do a public notification or do a media application. If you have more than 500 people, though, you had to do a media notification anyways. So it's all about, and I want to emphasize this because all the rule says is if you mess up and you discover that you've been sharing data, you have to notify. That's it, right? If you notify people, you don't have to tell them, oh, we're going to hire credit, right? There's no a specific apology text. There's no consequences for the CEO. There's no, like, all you have to do is notify. And so the details of the notification are super important then, because that's the obligation. There's not some additional obligation. You just have to let people know that you had a breach. Now, of course, what does a breach mean? It means that you allowed data out in terms contrary to what you told the person who contributed data or worked with your system had said. And that's where it gets interesting, because the FTC has enforced the fraudulent. Because if you say, hey, give me $10 and I'll take your data and I'll give you some valuable service, and you do something other than the data you have with the data than you said you would do in your terms of service, that's fraud, right? That's lying to get money, which is what the fancy term for fraud is. And so the FTC has used fraud and its mandate to enforce fraud to go and go after companies that had misused healthcare data, but they did not use the PHR breach notification. They used the fact that they have a broad authority to go after organizations that are fraudulent. Okay, so take us back to 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Andrea Downing, who was a co-founder of the Light Collective, had found a very significant problem with Facebook and the Facebook groups and the way that it was sharing data. It was super egregious. It was just incidentally publishing under the real names of people their healthcare conditions, and it was a big deal. And we went to the FTC and said, this is a problem, and it's a breach. We regard this as a breach. It's not what Facebook is outside of what it promised people. And we said Facebook should be considered a PHR for the purposes of this breach. And the reason we said that is because of this. It says, and this is the definition of a personal health record. A personal health record means an electronic record of PHR identifiable. So it uses the term PHR in its definition. That seems weird. Of identifiable health information on an individual that can be drawn from multiple sources, and that is managed, shared, and controlled by or primarily for the individual. So what we had gone to the FTC, we filed a formal FTC complaint that got the attention, and we published the fact that we filed the FTC complaint, and that got the attention of Congress, who pulled in Facebook for a closed-door meeting about what that meant. We were not invited to that. I'm still a little bit pissed off about that, because it meant that we could not rebut the statements that Facebook's that were very likely false. And since this time, a huge number of clarifications have happened, and it certainly is true that we have a much better understanding of all of the shenanigans and data shenanigans that Facebook and companies like Facebook do in the world. So, but we were but the FTC responded to us in our complaint and said, well, the problem here is that Facebook is not a PHR. Now, that's a really interesting position to take, because what that means is, all right, is it an electronic health record of, and what we're specifically thinking about here was the Facebook Groups product. Now, the Facebook Groups product, when it is used to run a patient group and to have a group of patients kind of collaboratively manage their care, they're in many cases requiring that you expose part of your healthcare records just to be a part of the group. So it certainly has identifiable health information. It's identifiable because everything on Facebook uses a real name. And so identifiable, check. Health information, check. On an individual, check. Drawn from multiple sources. So people would post their MRI records. They would post their genetic records, specifically in the group that Andrea was a part of. They would, publish their doctor's notes. They would publish their blood pressure. I mean, everything, right? So certainly drawn from multiple sources, and that is managed, shared, and controlled by or primarily for the individual. So certainly the individual interacting with it, this information was managed, shared, and controlled. And the sharing, I think, is really an important term because it indicates that you can have a platform that's purpose is to coordinate the data sharing between patients, and that counts. And then the question of, does this meet the definition of a PHR? And so in Facebook's defense for a moment, think about how problematically broad this could be. You can imagine, for instance, and I don't know if Aaron is still listening, but I'd love to know. Aaron, do you have many people in your community who use Google Drive or Google Documents to track their children's, like a spreadsheet to track scores, and then they share that with their doctor? Like, do you know people who do that, or do you do that? And every time I've asked anybody who's in a patient community, everybody says, well, I know a couple people who do that, or I've seen such a record. And certainly women use in the past, of course, now tracking menstrual cycles is this whole other thing now because of the changes to abortion laws in the United States. But people would track their menstrual cycle using a Google Drive spreadsheet. And this is the date, and this is what happened, and this is what the results are. And so let's think about Google Drive from that perspective. A Google Drive spreadsheet. One, is electronic record? Of course. Is it identifiable? Yes, absolutely. It has the email address, which usually has somebody's name in it. So it is pretty obvious to see who's interacting with it. It's on an individual. Yes. Drawn from multiple sources. Yep. And it says it can be drawn from multiple sources. So for one thing, it doesn't have to be drawn from multiple sources, but it certainly could be. And that is managed, shared, and controlled by or primarily for the individual. Like if you think about a Google spreadsheet to track any clinical condition, the answer in this definition is yes. These would meet the definition of a PHR. The problem and the reason why I would argue that this is an example of a general internet resource that can be used as a PHR without the company behind it marketing for that purpose, or promoting it for that purpose, or attempting to make money from it being used as that purpose. And Google Drive is free, or at least some permutations of it are. The ones that a individual patient would use are free. So it's not making money. It's not promoting that particular use. Although I'd be interested, I wonder if in the history of Google Drive that they've ever advertised its use for tracking healthcare data. That would be an interesting question, but I think the answer to that question is no. And so you can shoehorn any digital system that has any level of complexity in sharing. Flickr you could use for sharing and coordinating healthcare records, right? Which is a photo sharing platform. And by the way, if you don't know what Flickr is and you don't know what Google Drive is, I don't know. I'm not the person who's going to explain how the internet works. So I think you're going to need more help than I can give. But Facebook is interesting because it had promoted in multiple occasions the use of its group product for patient communities. And it had promoted so it had on its web pages, it said, this is good. This is something that, patient communities are. Mark Zuckerberg himself said, this is something that patients are using in speeches. So they advertised it as a tool for patient communities. And the name for the product implied that data was at least somewhat protected in a way that when people had explained what the vulnerability was, they were surprised. And it its advertising targeting system absolutely included clinical topics. And since Aaron, thank you, for listening. Aaron's a member of community where of people who have potential lung infections, and it turned out that the genetic disease that Aaron deals with is one of the ones that has very specific clinical topics that you can target using the advertising system of Facebook. So that means that it was promoting its use for patients by the CEO on its website. It was making money from the ability to target ads on those clinical topics. And so it felt very different to us. And it felt like any reasonable definition of a PHR should include Facebook. But when we talked to the people at the FTC, what they said is this definition of a personal health record is really hard to meet. And we were just kind of flabbergasted by this because, as I just demonstrated with Google Drive, every tool on the internet seems like it's covered by the strict definition, right? Because if it's capable of communicating between people and sharing rich content, you can use it as a PHR. And so the fact that Facebook was promoting it and making money off of it as a PHR seemed pretty relevant. And then the simple reality is that the FTC had not enforced this rule at all. So from our perspective, this was just an example of Facebook has good lawyers, has expensive lawyers. Facebook at the time was facing antitrust actions. And it just seemed like to us that the FTC was just couldn't enforce this against a large company. That's what it looked like to us as patients. They did not have the will. So that brings us to last week. And the FTC enforces the health breach notification rule against GoodRx in a first of its kind enforcement act. And we had specifically asked, took a long time to get this information out of the FTC. Have you ever enforced this rule against anybody? Because if you've enforced the rule against anyone, then there is a clarification, implicit clarification of what you mean by the definition of PHR. And we could say, and now we can do this, does this enforcement action reasonably interpret what is a PHR and what is not a PHR? So, okay. So now let's talk about GoodRx. And let's talk about what GoodRx is. On January 15th, 2023, if you had asked me, is GoodRx a bad thing or a good thing, I would have said, and I mean, I should probably still argue that on balance, it is a good thing. The system for selling drugs to patients in the United States is very, very complicated and highly problematic. There's all of these rules and this happens for hospital care and a bunch of other things that talk about relative pricing. And if you are a pharmaceutical company in the United States or doing business in the United States, you would like to be in a position to say, I want to sell my medications to as many people as possible, but if someone is very rich, I'd like to be able to, or has health insurance, I'd like to be able to charge more for my medication because it is in many cases, and I think the pharmaceutical industry, if you look at them defending their industry, which they don't do enough, because I don't know how big pharma got unpopular, but it's like Google seems to be pretty cool still, and people who make cures are evil. I don't get it, right? And of course, people resent having to pay too much for medications, but they're not really willing to actually have a conversation about what too much means and what context. So if you're a drug company, it would be really good if you could say, look, if you don't have any money, we still want to get you the drug, and we'll have the people who have money and have health insurance subsidize effectively the people who don't. But there's all of these regulations, and it's an extraordinarily complicated topic, which I really don't know enough about, that kind of means that you set a price and then that's the price, right? And so drug companies don't have the flexibility necessarily to do that, to just have the price be different. So what drug companies will do is they'll have what they call rebate programs. And these rebate programs are ways for people to get very significant discounts to drugs while keeping the price essentially the same thing. So they basically say, look, the pill still costs $100 a month for a month's supply, or $1,000 or $10,000, or whatever it costs. But if you don't have any money, you can talk to us about a rebate program, and we'll make and the price will stay the same, right? Quotey fingers, and you'll get a rebate on your medication. And so they have these programs that, if you knew to look, could ensure that a person who qualified for them, which are usually based on income, or sometimes it's just based on like you needing it one month, and you didn't have to say income. You just say, I want a discount this month, and they would give you a temporary discount or something. So the qualifications for these programs were in some cases very generous, and the pharmaceutical companies did this in large part to address the problems with their pricing. And so, but it was complicated. There were forms to fill out, and it was, you had to figure out, this medication, you had to go to this website. And what GoodRx did, it was very clever, is they came in and they started using some of the digital integrations for the back end systems with PBMs and other digital systems for working and engaging with formularies to figure out, and also patient data to figure out if there are rebates that a patient could qualify for in real time at the point of care. So what would happen is that you download GoodRx, and I still recommend it. I don't know of another tool that does this better, or even another tool that does it at all. And you download this tool, and you go to your pharmacy, and you stand in front of your pharmacy, and you press in what you're being asked to buy by your healthcare provider, and you'll have GoodRx will raise something on the screen that then you can show to your pharmacist, and they'll type something into their system, and sure enough, you'll get potentially massive discounts on your medications. And so this was kind of an automation of this rebate process that really did it continues to do a lot of good in the world. So at first blush, I am not inclined to criticize GoodRx business model, because what it was a fix for a very substantial problem, which is the kind of egregious price increases on medications over the years. It was an automation of the way for the pharmaceutical industry to kind of self-police that and improve things for patients. It's a pretty big deal. So that's the background on what GoodRx is. Now, years ago, and according, let me just pull out these other information. This is what the FTC had to say about this. Their GoodRx is going to pay a $1.5 million civil penalty, which is nothing. It's just irrelevant. The real punishment for GoodRx is this on the website, right? Them being outed about this. And they said, first of this order, and it's the first time this has happened. FTC is and I have not read this complaint, and I probably should read this complaint very carefully, because I think it's I'm very interested to see and read how the FTC parsed whether and how GoodRx a PHR. GoodRx obviously meets the definition of a PHR, or no question meets the definition of the PHR. But I would like to see the manner in which they justify that, because it's not actually. Let me say how it's not obvious. If we go back over to let's see here. Do I have? I guess I've gotten rid of the breach notification rule. It's not clear to me that you manage share your information with GoodRx. They're really providing a service, right? So the management aspect of this is a little bit wonky. So all things said, I just want to see how the FTC came to the conclusion that the breach notification applied. Now, the other thing is this, this, I think, yeah. So I definitely feel like this is a non-apology from GoodRx, and I think the internet broadly agrees with me on this topic. And when I say a non-apology, first sentence at GoodRx, protecting our private users' privacy is one of our most important priorities. Okay, we are thoughtful and disciplined about what the information we gather and how and why we use it. Right. So, if I have ever heard a first two sentences that didn't fail to take responsibility for something, that's pretty much, it's up there for not taking responsibility, and very, very precise language. And I'm a huge fan of the don't tell me that this is important to you and this is a relationship with companies. Don't tell me this is important to you as I'm dealing with the very, very clearly with the fact that this is not important to you. The classic example is I call whatever company it is for my utility bill or something, and they say, your call is very important to us. And our call line is especially busy right now, and that's the reason why you can't just talk to somebody. And the answer to the question that is clearly the call is not so important that you figure out, well, if we had 10 people sitting at a desk waiting, we would never have somebody waiting, and we would be able to ensure that everybody was taking breaks and no one ever had to wait on the phone. So when they say the call is very important, they don't mean very important, because if it was very important, they would hire in a way that would mean there was no queue. So I'm a little bit allergic to the intellectual dishonesty there. It's like, protecting our privacy is one of our most important priorities. Okay, well, if that was the case, then you wouldn't have this problem. So we're talking about the fact that you didn't protect the privacy. Let's not begin with you telling us how important you protecting the privacy is. So I don't care for this apology out of the gate. We do not agree with the FTC's allegations that we admit no wrongdoing. Entering into the settlement allows us to avoid time and expensive and productive litigation. We believe it's detailed in the settlement will have no material impact on our business or our current and future operations. So they're basically saying we're paying to make this problem go away. Having said this, they proactively addressed the issue the FTC focused on almost 3 years ago. That doesn't matter, right? If you had a breach, the fact that you proactively addressed the breach matter for shit. So I don't like that they're bringing that up. Advertising tracking pixels remain a common technology. This is especially shitty because we all know that the pixel is bullshit. So the fact that they're saying this is the way the rest of the world works is, I really don't care for that either. I haven't read this before, so you're seeing me get pissed off as I read it. We do not agree with the FTC's allegations regarding health breach notification rule. We do not agree with the assertion that this is a violation of the breach notification rule. No medical records were shared. That's not true. It's just not true. So the fact that someone uses a drug discount program at all is clinical information. Absolutely injecting with a pixel clinical information to Facebook. And the idea that something has to be like a thing in a medical record in a doctor's office in order to be covered by a PHR, that is just complete bullshit. And I apologize. I did not mean. I don't know that I have like a swearing level on this, but I just can't do it. So I guess my LinkedIn thing is PG-13 in its rating. I don't know. But yeah, this is not okay. So no medical records were shared. That is totally intellectually dishonest and not okay. let's see, it was IP addresses and web URL information. Okay, IP addresses, no big tech company worth its salt cannot translate an IP address to a person's name. That is easy, easy, easy. I have not logged into Facebook in, it could be years, right? And the only time I log into Facebook now is to check and see, like, they've cut off my access for the advertising because, they don't like what I did the data examinations item. So there's very little reason for me to get in there. And when I am there, I'm usually testing whether or not their systems are still as broken as they were the last time I looked. But I can assure you that Facebook knows my IP address and can translate my IP address to Fred Trotter no, in any case, because it has data sharing agreements with an incredible array of people, including people like Amazon and it's like the idea that they were not sharing identities because they were only sharing IP addresses and web page URL. That is farcical, and it's messed up. Any sharing with vendors, we've done confidential provisions in place. To our knowledge, those vendors did not seek or leak otherwise reshare information. No medical records were shared. The FTC off references a HIPAA issue, which now I'm going to have to read the whole thing because that's conflating the two systems. It shouldn't be talking about HIPAA. This refers to an old seal displayed on a telehealth website that we acquired in 2019. We removed the seal a few months after the acquisition as we worked on integrating this newly acquired business. That's really interesting because that means that this case is going to be foundational in advertising HIPAA compliance. So if you'll permit me, since apparently I am not going to be talking about HIPAA very much on this call because I wanted to talk about the Pixel thing and HHS's guidance, but I guess I'm going to be talking about this on the next blog post. Because I'm just going to talk about this and realize how complex this was. And I hope, please let me know, if you feel like these unboxing videos where I start looking into something online are interesting. And I'll do more or less of them based on whether people feel like they're useful. But it is you cannot be certified as HIPAA compliant. And there are organizations that will certify your HIPAA compliance and give you the logo saying you have been certified by HIPAA. And what that gives you the effect is that HIPAA is something like a driver's license. Like you pass a test, and then you've got a little thing, I can drive now because I got my driver's license. And that's not how it works. And everyone that I know who has ever worked in or near the Office of Civil Rights at HHS, which is the part of HHS that enforces HIPAA, is mildly annoyed by this issue because there's these companies that are saying, kind of issuing driver's licenses, and what the actual law says is you have to follow these rules if you're on the highway. So it doesn't matter if you've got a driver's license or not. If you're driving, you have to do this. And so the idea of licensure is a totally separate thing, and they use the brand of HIPAA in their licensure language, which is that's just not the regulatory paradigm of HIPAA. So the fact that they're discussing a HIPAA logo in this case, especially for an organization which is not actually HIPAA covered, that's fascinating. And it's really important, and it might touch on this other issue that HHS has with OCR that is really important, which is this idea that somebody can so one party A, can say to another party B, where party B is probably a patient, so maybe party P, hey, come talk to us. We've got this. We're good on our HIPAA stuff, and therefore it's safe to do business with us. Well, the organization C that is certifying that somebody's good with HIPAA, that is not something that actually makes, an organization can just create a stamp and be like, Fred's super awesome HIPAA certification, and go around to hospitals and be like, give me $1,000 and you can use my name to prove that you're following the law. I know you're following the law because you have to follow the law, right? I'm not going to check anything, right? I'm going to make sure you're following cybersecurity best practices, and I'm going to call it Fred certification, as though HHS has given Fred Trotter any kind of blessing to like police HIPAA. And that's essentially what a certified HIPAA compliant thing is worth. It's not worth the paper it's written on, right? Now, if you are doing something like the U.S. News does, where it's like U.S. News goes to hospitals and says, fill out our survey, and we're going to like dig into how you operate, and then you'll be one of our best hospitals, or you won't be our best hospital. Well, that has some value because then the brand is U.S. News, right? It's if you are a Fred Trotter good hospital IT certified hospital, and then I put my personal brand or my company brand out and say, this is a good thing and you're doing a good job, and I've checked, and here's what I've checked, and here's a list of all the things that I've checked. But the fact that you're using a government law that everyone has to follow, right? You are either HIPAA covered or you're not. And if you are HIPAA covered, then you have to follow those rules. That is a problematic thing. And it's not clear what the government can or should do about that. But the fact that there was a HIPAA sticker involved is interesting. And now I really need to know what the implication was. No material impact on our business. And I don't know whether that matters. I think that's please don't leave us, investors. GoodRx is a leader on data privacy. Well, all right. So GoodRx folks, I don't know if you pay attention to the internet, but you are not a leader on data privacy, because this is a non-apology. This is not leadership. This is you not taking responsibility. You are dodging responsibility. You are ignoring the impact that your systems have had on patients. You are ignoring the fact that you've participated with Facebook specifically, which has injured people with their terrible data practices. And, if you want to say Facebook is even eviler than, we are, well, boy, I'll be right there alongside of you saying that's definitely true. But you are not a leader in data privacy if you are apologizing for this problem in this manner. So this letter proves you are not a leader on data privacy. No. I say good day to you, sir. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to do that. There's a meme that I wish I could insert. I haven't figured out how to insert the memes. And I might, now that I'm not going to spend time, I'm going to figure out how to do that. Let's see her. All right, I'm going to allow ads to the meme site. Let's know your meme. That's not the right one. Let's go back. I know my meme. I know what it is. Okay. So I'm just learning to, there's a possibility that this recording is going south. So if that's the case, my apologies. It does look like I'm still on the internet. Looks like a whole tab has died. Okay. So here is my meme compliance. This is I do run a fully meme compliant video cast here. Yeah, no, GoodRx, you are not a leader in data privacy. The fact that you wrote this apology letter is a perfect indication that you do not take your patient data privacy responsibilities seriously. You are denying, and you are serving your investors, and you are serving your partners, and you are not, definitively not, doing what is right for patients by sending out this apology letter. I think your situation, which is to say that you were not aware that Facebook pixels has implications, and that the Facebook ad network had such negative implications. I got to be honest with you. 5 years ago, I thought Facebook was a mostly good thing too. And I'm right there with you with, hey, I misunderstood this, and I recommended to patients that they get on Facebook. And now I'm like, when somebody asks me, hey, we got this disease, got this problem, and I'm like, should I look online for help with that? I'd be like, you should weigh that very, very carefully, because there are some really nefarious actors who will take advantage of the fact that you put your data up. But the communities of patients online, if you are feeling lost and overwhelmed by your disease, and you feel like the clinicians that are taking care of you are not addressing some of your most pressing concerns, it can be extraordinarily helpful to connect with other patients. But caveat emptor, be aware that if you are using the internet and you are not paying for a product, you are the product. So it's not just caveat emptor, it's caveat, you are the sheep going to slaughter in this scenario, so be really careful. And I am sympathetic to the situation that GoodRx is in terms of not having a comprehensive understanding of what the implications of data privacy are, but failing to acknowledge that there are issues, failing to acknowledge this is a big deal, denying any responsibility. Do not kid yourself that you are a data privacy leader, because that is definitively not true, because leaders take responsibility. I understand your confusion, because in the United States, our leaders are professionals at not taking responsibility, at least in the political system. I know how that can be confusing. Same thing with our average CEO, absolutely does not understand how to take responsibility for something, but you are not taking responsibility. You're not taking responsibility for the problem. You're not taking responsibility for the impact. And part of the reason you get away with that is that it's very hard to calculate what the impact is, which is, I don't know. I also recommended at one time globally, generously, go on Twitter, go on Facebook. Yes, share your patient information, connect with your other patients, because I thought that the mechanics, the walls that surrounded patient communities on these platforms were I thought they existed, and they don't. So I was wrong. I made a mistake. I gave bad advice. I regret giving that bad advice. That is what taking responsibility sounds like. And so I've had to do this thing where I admit I was wrong about those platforms, like on stage, like 6 or 7 times. Every time it comes up, I have to acknowledge that, because if I fail to do that, then it damages my credibility every time anybody would go back and look at a video of me saying how cool it is, or something I've written. And you know what? Now that I think about it, there's some articles out there still about how to find your e-patient community that are kind of knocking around that I should go and update, because they are blanket endorsements. I still feel like, privacy is a tough thing to talk about in the patient community in a kind of realistic way, because every patient in every cancer ward in the country, the ones who are doing well, are subject to walking around with gowns that show their bare ass, and they want to live, they want to see their kids and their grandkids, and they are suffering in some cases so much pain, and they just don't care. that their ass is hanging out, right? That's just not what's important. And so in many cases, like that's how I kind of feel about connecting with a patient community. If you are feeling totally alone and you're suffering some life-altering situation, yeah, go on Facebook and find the Facebook group of your rare disease or your condition and figure out anything that might help you live a little more comfortably or maybe a little longer from a patient community. Jump in, the water's fine, so to speak. But you should know that the companies that host these platforms that everybody is on, that everybody uses, Twitter, Facebook, I think even LinkedIn is probably not perfect. I'm here putting content out on all these platforms right now. YouTube. I'm literally streaming to 3 things that I cannot fully endorse in terms of their patient privacy approach. It's what we have, and you have to go to war with the army that you have. And if you're desperate to solve a clinical problem, then you should solve the clinical problem. And you should definitely do that. You should definitely get the help you need. But you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk, and that's a problem. And I just don't for this, because I have been impressed. What GoodRx's business model is, I appreciate, but I do not appreciate this. GoodRx is a leader on data privacy. Like, no, thank you. All right, so we've considered. Well, this is exactly what I was saying. Since GoodRx, we have saved American consumers an estimated $45 billion in medical costs by bringing discounts direct to people who need them. That should have been the first sentence. Like, hey, we fucked up, but generally we do good work. That should have been your first sentence. Our customers trust them to save them money. They trust us with their health information. We've worked hard to earn that trust. Sure, privacy and securities are paramount to us. Again, you shouldn't be talking about how important this is in the context of a failure. If you have any questions, we are glad to put this matter behind us. You have totally not put this matter behind you. You have this letter. This letter is, hey, the people in leadership at GoodRx definitely do not understand how the patient community feels about this stuff. Definitely. You are so far from putting this behind you. You have no idea. Until this letter improves, I'm going to give you shit every time I speak on stage. And I'm going to encourage everyone I know to do the same, because this is not taking responsibility and is not good enough. Okay. Yeah, the law contains forward-looking statements. Yeah, there you go. Of course, definitely. Like this, there you go. Maybe you should start with this. Hey, this is a letter that we send to our the public in order to please our investors. There you go. That's what this is. No, this was not a helpful page. Are you confident in the information on this page? No, I am not. And blah, 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 blah. More stuff that doesn't have anything to do with this. Let's see. Did the information answer your questions? No. Thanks. We appreciate your feedback. I'll bet you do. All right. I'm going to tweet this. Non-response to the FTC settlement via GoodRx, and tweet. All right, so enjoy that on the Twitter. Okay, well, I guess in the next talk, I'm going to cover what's happening with the Pixel stuff. And that'll be very interesting, and you can all look forward to that. I did not realize I was going to get so upset about this. Actually, I about 80% of the time, which I think is a pretty good score on this, when I'm pissed off about something in the healthcare industry, I'm pissed off about the right thing, or I feel like I am. Like when I look back in moments of emotional clarity and emotional calmness on what made me angry, I'm usually angry about the right stuff. I'll let you know on the next blog post if I decide that I got angry about this one inappropriately. But I think this is worth being angry about. I really think that was an egregious apology letter from GoodRx. And I will also read the actual settlement now because it looks like it's important enough that that's going to be important. I was going to try this donate QR code. This is the donate button up here for the default one that comes out of RStream, which is the software that I'm using to stream, and it allows you to make donations to the Ukrainian war effort, which I think is pretty cool. So I thought I'd turn that on for part of the video stream here. I want to talk about Datapalooza. It's going to come week. I wanted to mention I do have some discount codes that I can get out. So if you are a patient or you'd like to go and attend, I think I can save you a little bit of money and get a hold of me with a LinkedIn message, and I will try to do that. Really excited about Datapalooza. It's got a rocking lineup. I am learning the reason I'm streaming is so that I can learn how to stream, so that I can stream at Datapalooza. And Academy Health has been incredibly accommodating, incredibly helpful, and I really appreciate them. And they agree with me, and I think the reason they're doing that is they agree with me that it's a problem that the conference is not able to stream. The costs for doing so are unreasonable, and they, like all organizations, are facing a coming recession, and so they can't just throw money at problems. But I am concerned that the patient community is. I think what I love about Datapalooza is that they continue to prioritize the patient community, and because we are now moving from a pandemic to an endemic, maybe, I don't know, who knows what's going to happen, but maybe that's the right way to say it. And if you're immunocompromised, it can be pretty hard to justify coming to an in-person conference still. And then, of course, if you are a patient, you are super financially sensitive because you have bills to pay that are absolutely critical. So the fact that we're entering into a recession and inflation is crazy means those two things together, I think, could keep patients away. So the reason why I'm streaming and the reason why Academy Health is kind of helping me stream, and has been very generous with their time and putting me in touch with some of the people who are going to be speakers at the conference, so that I will be able to fill my my streaming with guests who are the people you hear from the stage on Datapalooza, is because they are very keen to do something in order to engage with the patient community online during the Datapalooza conference. Let me pull up very briefly the Datapalooza homepage. So I think I just do this again. No, I have to share and then do that. And then I do screen one. And then I do this. All right, so here it is, 2023 Health Datapalooza. It's in Washington, D.C. at the Hyatt Regency Crystal City. That's the one that is close to Reagan Airport. And it is going to be not this weekend, but next weekend. And they have, again, some rock star people. So actually, this is someone I didn't know. Anita Bajaj. I hope I'm not butchering that last name. My apologies if I am. And medical officer FDA. That's incredibly cool. I think there's a bunch of these that are new since the last time we've gone over. Yeah, these are really cool. I'm just going to slowly go through them. Oh, Dr. Honey, huge fan of Dr. Honey. Has done amazing work. And a long-time public servant that has really changed things in dozens of areas. That what I like about Dr. Honey and in general, really good public servants is that they make a huge difference, and they're not terribly prideful about it. So there's what they're famous for, but there's also dozens of other things that they've worked on that and Dr. Honey has definitely impacted a lot of things that I care about as a healthcare data advocate in positive ways. Razu, awesome. Mickey Tripathi is one of the most famous and absolutely deserves to be the ONC famous health IT professionals. Really made a lot of change before becoming the ONC. So I really am looking forward to hearing from him. And then there's a bunch of names that I will not bother to listen to. But that's the information. Health Datapalooza is coming up. If you cannot make it, tweet to me, DM me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and we will find some way to get your questions answered, or if there's a session that you would like me to investigate, or questions that you have about what's going to happen that you wish you could pass along, I will do my best to triage those and make sure that they are included in the streaming content that I'll be performing. I am essentially not going to be able to go to the conference for the most part. I will be at the conference, I'll be in the conference. I'll be kind of somewhere off to the side so I can get internet access and do a stream. So with that, thank you so much. I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for listening. For those 5 people who listen to this live, very much appreciate it. Oh, okay. Well, it looks like Erin is commenting on my tweet, and her comment is so good. Nothing says I'm sorry like not saying I'm sorry. Erin, this is the reason why we get along so well. I love your sense of humor. And again, if you want to interact with me on Twitter or LinkedIn ahead of this Datapalooza, please do so. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at the conference, either in person or digitally. Look for me. I'll probably be wearing one of these. I got like 10 of these Sriracha shirts. I just realized my sister was like, yeah, I thought you were just like washing the shirt and wearing it the same, like over and over again. And I was like, didn't you notice that some of them are like bright red, some of them are pink because they've been washed, like different colors slightly? And it's like, no, I thought you had like one Sriracha shirt. And it's not true. I have like 8 Sriracha shirts. So I'll probably be wearing this, and I'm pretty easy to spot. So feel free to come up to me at the conference. That's why I go to the conferences, so the people who want to come up to me and talk to me can talk to me. So I'll try to be around during the lunches and the breakfasts and things like that. So I hope to see you there. Definitely go if you can. If you can afford it, if you're in DC, and you're on the fence, hit me up for a discount code and maybe make that the thing that makes your decision for you. And I'll talk to you soon. And thank you for watching my video cast. Bye-bye.